Hei og velkommen til Hack On Online. På høyre side så har du muligheten til å stille spørsmål, så dersom du lurer på noe, så kan du skrive det inn der. Det er en glede for Hack On å kunne introdusere Camille Victor Prunier. Vær så god.
Tusen takk. So today we're going to talk about Active Directory security and where to even start. I've given this talk at Siket Festivalen last summer. And this talk is about the legacy that comes with Active Directory security and Active Directory infrastructure in a lot of companies that have been using it for many years. And the question that a lot of people have at some point is, where do I start with my security in Active Directory? And is it too late to actually start? Should I just turn off everything and start from scratch? So my name is Camille Victor Prunier. I'm French and I've been living in Oslo for over 10 years now. I'm currently the COO at Excellent Cybersecurity AS, a new company that we started in September with my previous boss and colleague. So I'm a purple teamer. I've experience in SOC, in architecture, and in pen testing itself as well. I've done my share of internal pen tests, but nowadays I focus a bit more on web pen testing. As a disclaimer for this talk, I'm definitely not an AD expert. So if you have intricate questions about why and how things works in AD, this is probably not the right talk to ask those questions, but I'll try to answer anything that is really purely related to the security part of Active Directory. So the attack vectors in AD, what are we actually trying to compromise or to leverage to escalate our privilege or to do lateral movement? Because Active Directory is here to administer and organize all our users, machines, and relationships between them. So we have the permissions, of course. The AD permissions are everything when we're talking about attack vectors. This is what is giving you the right to log into your computer. This is what is giving me the right to modify a server or a policy. So as an attacker, if I can find the right people that have the rights that I need to do my attack, this is where it becomes very dangerous for a company. Domain administrators, we see that time and time again, people place way too many users in the domain administrator group because, well, always in Active Directory, if you don't want users to be stopped and be able to do their work, you place them with the highest privilege possible because then they will never be stopped. So having them in the domain administrator group makes it really easy to prevent any way that they can be stopped in the Active Directory. Users in random groups, IT managers will create groups to give access to certain machines, to certain servers, or maybe softwares even. And so at some point, they forget that those groups exist, but still new employees are still onboarded to those groups by default. And at the end, you create a lot of legacy with random groups that have strange privileges, but as an attacker, you can leverage those. They're really hard to find as a defender if you don't do the proper steps or you don't use the proper tools. But yeah, it's very important to check all those groups. The service accounts is a big weakness that companies have in their Active Directory. We're going to talk about Kerber roasting a bit later, but the service accounts are accounts that you will not be used directly by a human. So you mark them as service accounts in your Active Directory, and you will see why that's dangerous later on. And then the passwords. Passwords, the way they're used in Active Directory is always a weakness, an attack vector for any attacker. Because it really depends. Either it's the policy that is weak or the way they're stored. It's going to make it very easy for an attacker to find them. We found passwords in the description of a user in Active Directory, which is public to anyone that is on the Active Directory. We've found passwords in desktop, in text files on the desktop of IT managers. And we found also in SMB drives, because SMB are also a big attack vectors with open SMB shares. As an attacker, you can spider those and find any word or anything that is interesting, any secret that you want to find in those SMB shares. So we talked about permissions. The way this is handled, it's using DACL and ACEs in Active Directory. So those will be access control lists with your access control entries, and they will identify users, groups, machines that are allowed to access an object. So it might be a bit too small for you on the right side, the mapping, but this is a map that I really like. There are tons of other maps available online, but this is an explanation of the different tools and attacks that you can do if a user has a certain access on an object. So for example, if you have generic write, you can write properties on that object, and this is very dangerous for a defender to have that privilege. So you need to make sure that that person has that right on something that you okay to lose if that user is compromised. So ACEs can be abused to do lateral movement, as we've explained before, and privilege escalation. I've put a link to the YouTube of SpectreOps. SpectreOps are the creator of the next tool we're going to talk about, or the first tool. And they're really the ones that I've explained at the beginning why those DACL and ACEs could be abused for privilege escalation or lateral movement. I really recommend watching their DEF CON talks. They're really, really interesting if you're interested to learn more about those types of attacks. So everything came out of a quote by John Lambert, who works in the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center. Defenders think in lists and attackers think in graphs. And as long as this is true, attackers win. Everything in Active Directory is based on lists. All the rights that we give, all the groups that we're part of, all the computers that we can log into, everything is in list. So as a defender, if we try to list everything, sure, if we have 10 users, 5 groups and 10 machines, that's really easy to list. But in a modern company with a lot of IT infrastructure, a lot to manage, many employees, it's impossible to properly list. It will take months, if not years, to just start listing everything. And it's not even talking about analyzing all the lists. And after that, you need to coordinate everything and just make sure that you understand how one user can affect another, which makes it even more difficult. So attackers have found another way to do that. They think in graphs, they map out an infrastructure, and they find out the path from one user to another. They get more knowledge about your infrastructure that you ever did as a defender, and they do it way quicker. They can do it in minutes. And with experience, they can really identify really quickly the attack path that they need to take to gain access to the domain controller, for example, if they want to launch a ransomware attack. This can happen in minutes or days. It's really, really impressive. So the SpectreOps team have created BloodHound. They've created a community edition that they've continued to improve over the years. Nowadays, they've also created um, a a paid edition that we'll talk about. But BloodHound helps you to understand your AD. It will map out your entire AD instead of creating lists. It will map out all the users, all the machines, all the groups, and the relationship between them. So because you extracted all this information about your AD, you're able to play with it as well. So if you want to secure it, you can actually start removing relationships, removing users, removing machines, just to see how it plays out without actually affecting your Active Directory. This is really, really good to finally understand how your Active Directory looks like and how your security can be handled. Of course, if it looks like this here, this is very easy to administer, but most of the time we see something like this. And even then, it's not that crazy. But it takes experience. You have to play around with your Active Directory basically database in BloodHound. You need to work with the map and start to understanding what's important here. For example, on this mapping, if we look at the right side, we see that there's a group on the yellow icon. This is domain admins, domain administrator group. And we see all those green icons, which are user icons and the member of that group. Already here, when I see this map, I already know this company has a problem with domain administrators. There is no way they have that many, they need that many domain administrators. And then if we continue going to the left, we see that those domain administrators have sessions on a lot of computers. And domain administrators should only log in to domain controllers. This is called the tier strategy. This was done by recommended by Microsoft. So here I see already a lot of problems, but I've worked a lot in BloodHound, so I get that experience. But it can be really chaotic the first time you launch BloodHound or you look at your mapping. So don't be too worried about that. This is quite normal, and you'll find everything from the rights to RDP to people having sessions on computers and other things that can be exploited as an attacker. But if it's too chaotic, there is a tool that I recommend. It's an open source tool. It's called PlumHound. After you do your BloodHound scan, the data can then be used by PlumHound to generate a report. So you can see which users can RDP to which servers, how many domain users you have, how many domain administrators you have. This is very, very useful if you're a bit overwhelmed with the amount of information that you're getting through the BloodHound mapping. It can help you to then go back to BloodHound and try to find a bit more information because, of course, with BloodHound, as we see at the top here, for example, in the first mapping, top left, we see Windows 1. You can do some searches, you can find some groups, and you can right click on some nodes and find the shortest path to that node, for example. So really recommend looking at those tools. People have developed many open source tools around BloodHound because of how useful BloodHound is. So you can use that or find more tools open source. And then if you really need more help or you're really unsure how to start with BloodHound and you work for a large company, you can contact SpectreOps to talk about BloodHound Enterprise. This is their paid version of BloodHound Community Edition, the one they launched quite recently, maybe 2 years ago. And this will scan both AD and Entra ID if you have a hybrid environment. And it will come up with suggestions on how to mitigate the issues that BloodHound will find. You'll also have support from SpectreOps. And this is not a paid ad. I just respect a lot their company. So if you have, I think you need at least 2,000 users in your Active Directory to use BloodHound Enterprise. But if that's one of you in this talk, really recommend having a talk with SpectreOps. They will present you the tool and everything, and then you can decide later on if that's something for you. Another tool that we use a lot is PingCastle. So PingCastle, contrary to the mapping that BloodHound will do, it will come up with a report that you can use straightforward. And PingCastle is really, really fast to scan your Active Directory. The report that will be created is based on indicators. So it will find all the security issues that are in your Active Directory. It will give you details about those issues, and it will give you recommendation on how to mitigate them. And then from there, you'll get a grade on your or score on the 4 indicators. And this is really useful to set up as a KPI. This is something that we'll talk again in my presentation. KPIs are very important. So PingCastle is very useful for that. The tool is open source. If you use it internally in your company, you can use it for free. But if you use it for audits and for your clients, there is a paid subscription for that. As the meme shows on the right, PingCastle will find everything that is wrong with your Active Directory. So very often is a bit demoralizing to check the reports because you can get a bad score on a lot of indicators. So just don't worry about that. Run the tool, start working on the mitigations, and you'll see the score improve really quickly. So you've done your mapping. You have some reports thanks to BloodHound or PingCastle. But you can't just come up to the IT department or whoever will solve those issues for you and just give them a full report and forget about it and hope that they mitigate everything until the next scan. This is really not how that works. If it works like that, you work in a good company and you probably should stay there. But in most companies, it's really difficult to make things move without an actual proof of concept. So first of all, the AD auditing is continuous. AD is constantly changing, moving. New employees come in, old employees leave. It's always new updates coming to your Active Directory. New groups are created, new tools are used. So needs new rights to some people. Service accounts are added to the Active Directory. So you can't just do one Active Directory scan and just forget about it for the entire year. So this is continuous. Now in your when you start with Active Directory security, it's really easy to be overwhelmed, as I said, but you need to focus on low-hanging fruits. How many domain administrators do you have? Are you sure that those domain administrators log in only to domain controllers? Are you following tier strategy, which is separating domain controllers and domain administrators from everything else? And then you need to focus on mitigation and set up clear KPIs. As Rob Fuller said, if you don't use BloodHound regularly and you set up KPI based on that to measure improvement, you're doing yourself a disservice and you probably should get rid of Active Directory. To come back to the report without proof of concept, I was working previously and I had made a report, an extensive report with a lot of details and a lot of mitigations, a lot of steps to do. And I sent it to all the stakeholders that were supposed to work on those steps. And the report was password protected. 3 weeks later, I had a new employee come in the company and he wanted to read the report. So I sent him the report with the same password as I sent to everyone else. And he told me that the password was not working. And when I asked the other stakeholders, they told me that in fact they tested now and the password was not working. That was 3 weeks after I sent the report. So it's not useful to just send everything you find in your Active Directory and hope that they will solve it. Focus on low hanging fruits, on mitigation, try to have some proof of concept, so they will not doubt that what you found is actually the reality. So how can you create proof of concept? Well, the first thing that you can use are tools like Rebus. There are a lot of different tools that are able to use depending on your knowledge and your skill in pen testing or hacking. But Rebus is one that is very often used. So if you're going to password audit, for example, in the case of Kerber roasting, you want to prove that service accounts are a problem in your Active Directory, because sometimes AD administrators will place service accounts in the domain admins group, because they want the service accounts to not be stopped and have every privilege that it needs in the Active Directory. The problem with service accounts is that because they cannot be, they're not supposed to be logging in manually with a human behind them. The hash is stored in your Active Directory and can be extracted by anyone without any particular privilege. You can extract the hash and do what's called a Kerber roasting attack. We don't have the time to go in detail of why that works, but if you want to learn more about Kerber roasting, you can just Google it. There are tons of articles talking about it. So you can dump that hash of that service accounts with Rebus or the tool if you want, and then you can crack the hash remotely. So if the service account has a bad password, then it's over. You can take over that service account. And if that service account was a domain administrator, you can prove that then you can log into a domain controller and actually make modifications. And trust me, that will get things moving really quickly in your company if you can show that. Another thing that you can do is actually dump the entire database of hashes and start cracking the hashes to prove or to make some statistics on proving if the policy that you have in place is good enough, or if you need to improve the policy, if you need to have a bit more training and awareness around passwords for your users, because policies can always be bypassed. But yeah, this is a good way to test your own company. Another tool that I use a lot for proof of concept is CrackMap exec. Unfortunately, due to open source drama, CrackMap exec is now deprecated, so it will not receive any more updates until there is an actual stable fork that is done by someone else, because again, this is an open source project. It's a shame that this drama happened, because this was one of my favorite tools for sure. For example, if you were to do some brute forcing, you could do a brute force on all the machines on the network, and try to, if you have a list of users, for example, you extracted the list of username in Active Directory, and you just want to try a password. For example, the first line in my screenshot, October 2021. Or you do winter 2024, winter 2023, and you try to see if someone, at least one person, has that password in the Active Directory. And then if you found someone, it will automatically mark them in your BloodHound mapping. So as an attacker, that was really nice to have the two combines. And CrackMap exec is full of features. You can do a lot more than that. It's very impressive tool. So it's really a shame that there was some drama and the open source project has stopped now. But let's hope that it will start properly in on another fork on GitHub. The last tool that I'm going to talk about, this is not really a tool in itself. This is a list of Python scripts that you can use against Windows environment and Active Directory. So those tools will be used against network protocols. And again, this is very useful because we want to share as many proof of concept as possible. We just don't want to come with just theory and we think this is what is happening because BloodHound is showing it, and you just put tons of screenshots of BloodHound. You'll really tire anyone in that meeting when you're presenting the report. So what you want is actually proof of concepts and things that can light a fire to make the changes necessary. So as an example, when I was working previously, I found that all users, every single person, had local admin rights on 130 machines/servers. When I asked why, there was no reason. I was told that my tool was probably wrong, and I should change something because it's impossible that we have local admin on 130 machines. So what I did is I used those tools to connect to those machines because they didn't have RDP activated. So I used those networking tools to connect to those machines, take screenshots of a handful of them, and come back in my next report showing screenshots of the desktop or information, at least make one comment like, who am I? Just to show in the report that no, it's not my tool, it's not BloodHound that is wrong. I do have access to those machines, and everyone else in the company does as well. And then a week later, no one has had access to those machines anymore. So this is really, really important to come with proof of concepts instead of creating a debate. At least here, there is no debate. I have access to those machines. Here's the proof. Let's move on and do the mitigation. So as a conclusion for this presentation, this is, as I said, AD is continuous. You need to fix up some KPIs to be able to measure progress because you'll be scanning all the time. So AD will never be fully secured. It's always a moving thing. There will always be weaknesses in Active Directory or in your Active Directory infrastructure. There are things that won't be solved by Microsoft because they are per design. For example, as I said, the Kerber roasting, the fact that service accounts have their hashing, their hash that you can retrieve as a normal user. This will not be solved by Microsoft. This is by design. So the only solution is to have a very strong password for those service accounts and not give them unnecessary privileges. There are other things that will always be unsecure in Active Directory. The fact that when you log into a Windows machine, you leave your hash in the LSAS process for up to 10 hours or until you restart the computer. Those are things that are unsecure by default, but Microsoft will not change those. So you need to map your ID. You need to identify attack vectors. You need to report with proof of concepts, and then you need to help with the mitigations and the KPIs. And then you do it again. You remap the AD, you check the progress, you identify new or still attack vectors that are still there. You continue to report them with proof of concepts, and then you go around and around until you have a level of security and KPIs that you are satisfied with. And then it's just about keeping them there because IT managers and Active Directory administrators will make mistakes and they will open new attack vectors. This is completely normal. This is not their fault entirely. They're doing their job. They're not thinking all the time about security. Sometimes they just press a button or do something that causes a big issue and they didn't know better. But it's our job to identify that before someone else does and to change it as quickly as possible. So that's why recurring testing is essential. So this was it for me. There is tons to talk about in Active Directory security. I hope this will give you a bit of taste to explore a bit more. And if you want to go even further to develop your hacking skills in Active Directory to become a better defender and use a lot of different tools, I really recommend things like Hack the Box or Try Hack Me and different labs that you can find around that will really give you some understanding of the attack vectors and how to exploit them. So as a defender, you can use the same tools to make sure that it doesn't happen to you. All right, thank you very much. Let's see if there are some questions. Do you have a tool script way to verify if a share is open to be abused? Well, shares, you'll find them quite easily. You can exploit manually, or there are probably some tools like Yermon put in the chat. What I use a lot is SpiderMap, just to spider all the SMB drives. This is really nice because you can give it a word, for example, password, and then let it work on the accessible SMB drives for that user that you've compromised or that you're using. And then you can find out the name of the SMB drives you access and everything. So yeah, that's really good.
Det var et spørsmål som kom tidligere her også, Camille. Would it be possible to get a copy of these slides afterwards?
Yes, definitely. We'll be posting the slides on the Excellent LinkedIn page. So if people want to download that, they can do that from the LinkedIn page of Excellent Cybersecurity or Excellent Norge. Otherwise, I can send them to you, Yermund, if you have a way to share them with everyone that participated.
Yes, I can put them in this session, so it will be available in the recording for this session.
Awesome. Then, yeah, definitely I can give you that after.
Her det bare å kaste ut spørsmål hvis dere har det, når dere har ekspertise som Camille tilgjengelig. Det vi kan si kort jo kanskje at hvis man skal starte å gjøre dette på eget AD, så det jo en anbefaling å starte med for eksempel PingCastle, og kjøre det på en on-prem AD-server som du har, for da har du rett og slett en detaljert rapport klar i løpet av 1 til 3 minutter. Og det da en rapport som du kan både dele med ledelse, for den veldig god visuelt lagt opp, I tillegg til at du kan begynne som tekniker å jobbe ut fra den. Alt av hjelpetekster, hva du bør rette, hvordan du bør undersøke det, PowerShell-kommandoer for å fikse det, alt ligger I dette verktøyet og den HTML-fila du genererer. Og det fine jo at PingCastle trenger du ikke installere. Det rett og slett bare en fil du pakker opp, og så kjører du den på domenekontrolleren, og så har du resultatet klart. Og som Camille var inne på, så det jo da ofte mye feil. Det rødt, rødt og rødt. Da ser det ikke ut som det var noen flere spørsmål.
Nei, men tusen takk til alle for alle som skriver I chatten. Det var bra nok.
Hjertelig takk for spennende foredrag, Camille. Takk for at du så på. Gå og installer PingCastle og start å rette feil.
Ja.
Så snakkes vi. Tusen takk for nå.
Ha det bra.